Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we'll talk a Wolves blowout win over the Charlotte Hornets on Saturday. Perhaps a coming out party. Certainly the best game in the NBA to date for Rob Dillingham. Strong games from the Wolves bigs as they dominated the paint. We'll look ahead to the Wolves taking on arguably the NBA's worst team tonight, the winless Brooklyn Nets. It's all upcoming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. It is a Timberwolves game day as the Wolves take on the winless Brooklyn Nets tonight on Peacock. It's a 6 p.m. early Central start. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show today. I want to spend the first part of the show, not a full post-game pod, obviously, now that we're a couple days past the Wolves win over the Hornets, but I did want to touch on a couple of key things. So we won't do studs and duds and all that stuff, but I do want to get into what was most encouraging from that game and what we really need to see more of as long as Anthony Edwards is out, that hopefully then carries into when Ant returns. He's supposed to be evaluated today or tomorrow, I believe, and perhaps we'll get an updated timeline even today or tomorrow on when Ant could return, because he was supposed to be updated, or I should say reevaluated a week after the announcement, which was, I think, last Monday. So I don't think he's playing this week, but, maybe next week. And so what needs to happen between now and then that we got to see in the Hornets game? And yes, we're going to talk Rob Dillingham. This was easily his best game he's played in a Timberwolves uniform. So we'll break all that down here next. A big thank you off the top for making this show your first listen, hopefully also your favorite listen every single day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere. You can watch on YouTube as well. All right. So Saturday, the Timberwolves took on a Hornets team that at the time was coming off a couple of losses, but has had actually a really good offense so far this year. And so I'm not going to go blow by blow. Again, the game was a couple days ago, but I guess kind of the cliff notes from the first half of that game would have been that the Timberwolves offense was good. The defense was not. I mean, Minnesota was still down by 6 at halftime. Obviously no Ant, obviously on the road, but a team that they should still be better than. It's important to note, however, the Hornets actually did go out and win the next night against Utah, and they also have like a top 6 defense, or not defense. They have a terrible defense, but like a top 6 offense. Let's see, on cleaning the glass, Charlotte is actually 8th in offense. On Basketball Reference, they're 6th. So no matter how you slice it, a top 10 offense so far this year. And when LaMelo Ball has been on the floor for this Hornets team, the offense has been good over the course of his career. The problem is he only plays in like barely over half of the games since he's come into the league. So the defense, I think, just wasn't physical enough in the first half of that game. That I think was the primary issue. I actually don't think the rotations were that bad. I think they were just a little bit soft. The rebounding wasn't great early in the game. It was very good in the second half. We'll talk about that. But I wasn't like, I wasn't like, at halftime of that game, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't thinking this is a Timberwolves loss, even though they were down 6 to a bad team without Ant. I thought overall they were playing well and the offense was flowing fairly well. The third quarter obviously was the turning point in that game. Minnesota down 6 at halftime. They outscore Charlotte by 18 points in the third quarter. And Julius Randle and Reid carried the offense in the first half. It was all them. Jaden McDaniels played well, but it was really Randle and it was Nas. The third quarter was all about the Timberwolves backcourt and specifically Rob Dillingham. Now, a lot made, of course, he played high school basketball in North Carolina and he had friends and family at the game, and that's awesome. And maybe that kind of helped spur him on. And I know you look at the box score, and if you didn't watch this game, you'd be like, what do you mean? He scored 4 points. Rob Dillingham was one of the best players on the floor in the third quarter. And weirdly enough, the defense was every bit as good as the offense. And that's really where I want to kind of focus today is just how good Dillingham was in the third quarter. He had probably 6 deflections. I should go back and count, actually, and rewatch and see how many deflections he got, how many times he knocked the ball away from the ball carrier. And when him and Jalen Clark were on the floor together, that was a lot of fun. If Rob Dillingham's going to play like this, if he's going to get up into guys and be physical, and I don't think he got called for any cheap fouls either. Like the technique was actually really good from Rob Dillingham. A lot of times when he tries to get physical, he does it in a way that's not, and obviously it's funny to say getting physical because he's such a slight person, but the technique isn't always good. And he's leading with his chest and he's creating contact instead of staying down, staying back. And you can get away with reaching if you do it with a good technique and you're not hitting him with your body too, right? And he only got called for one foul in 15 and a half minutes in this game. And had several deflections. It was credited with 2 steals, but there was at least 2 or 3 other times he knocked the ball away from a ball handler or disrupted their dribble and caused there to be some havoc for the other team. And here's the thing. You play 15 minutes to get 2 steals. That's a good number anyway, right? Plus 4 assists. Yes, 2 turnovers. I didn't have a problem. I think one of them was bad. The other wasn't as bad. The shot selection, very good. He got blocked at the rim once. It was a good take. There's nothing wrong with the take. And it was coming off of a good defensive play that he made, by the way. No problems with that take. He missed one shot at about the free throw line that he actually missed kind of badly, back rimmed it. It was way long on the jumper. It was a good shot. It was in rhythm. It was off of I think a Gobert screen, wide open at the elbow. He just missed it. That's a good shot. It's different than a dribble up, no pass 3, which we saw Bones Highland do at least twice, if not 3 times in this game. I think he did do it 3 times, actually. We've seen Dillingham do it in the past too. It's better than a shake and bake isolation. I'm going to shoot a 19-footer. This was an in-rhythm elbow jumper. He just missed it. The passing was on point. The decision-making was on point. How many times did he get into or adjacent to the paint, basically touching the paint, slam on the brakes and kick the slam pass back out to the perimeter? We saw him do that several times, a couple of times for direct profit, for assists on his ledger, but also for hockey assists. Led to ultimately made baskets from the perimeter by the Timberwolves that he did not get an assist for, but it was him creating the shot. It was a nearly perfect third quarter from Rob Dillingham. I didn't really have any problems with anything he did. I thought all the decision-making was good. I thought the defense was phenomenal for Rob Dillingham. And if he competes like that defensively and is making the right decision the majority of the time, like, this is going to be a trend. He's going to play more minutes. And this is exactly what the Timberwolves need to see when Anthony Edwards is out. And even though Dillingham only scored 4 points himself, the buckets are going to come when teams see that he's willing to make those passes. Because right now, teams are playing him for the shot. Teams are expecting him. They're going to swarm him when he gets into the paint because they think he's going to try and do something crazy and, put up a difficult shot or whatever. Oh, I remember the other turnover that Dillingham had was at garbage time. He tried to dump it off to John Beringer, and it was a little too hot, but it really went through Berenger's hands, and it should have been caught. Like those types of things, like that, there was nothing wrong with that play, but I think opposing defenses are expecting him to try and make the crazy shot or make the crazy pass instead of just make the right play. And once he starts making the right play, which worked in this game to the tune of 4 assists in 15 minutes, then teams will be like, all right, we can't swarm him when he gets into the paint. And that's going to open up his shot and his offense. And we'll see the points and the shot attempts the shot makes go up for Rob Dillingham. And all of the above is what's needed when Anthony Edwards is hurt, is the shot creation for others. And then ultimately for Rob himself, he's going to earn more opportunities to shoot the basketball himself by creating stuff for other people. And this game was a great example of that. And the shot creation, especially with Dante DiVincenzo in the starting lineup, like, that's the trickle-down effect. Not having Ant is one thing. Not having DiVincenzo, and Conley, neither one of those guys is part of the bench unit. And obviously DiVincenzo was starting, I guess, before the Ant injury. So really, it's since day one this season with DiVincenzo as a starter, they need some additional offense from the bench. They have not gotten it from TJ Shannon to this point, which I think was kind of the assumption. But TJ Shannon was never... I think there is something in there in terms of a half-court creator, but like, Rob Dillingham is the guy with the most upside and most natural skill set that fits the half-court creator for himself and for others as a facilitator this side of Naz Reid, right? But from the backcourt, he's the only guy. And we saw that in this game. With DiVincenzo and Conley in the starting lineup, they need Dillingham to do this sort of stuff. And he's going to get every opportunity against a bad defensive team in the Brooklyn Nets on Monday to keep that momentum going. He's got to tackle what's in front of him. Right now, it's this opportunity to prove to Chris Finch, I deserve to stay in the rotation and play 15, 20 plus minutes per game. And from what we saw Saturday, that is a very viable thing moving forward if he plays like that, which is obviously a big if, but I think a reasonable one. I want to talk about Gobert, Randle, McDaniels quickly, and then we'll move on to the Wolves-Nets preview for tonight. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our title sponsors at Game Time. Basketball season well underway. A couple weeks in now. Nothing beats being in the arena for the opening games of the season. But let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It is easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is just get in the door to cheer on your team. And that's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. The Timberwolves, of course, are on their mini East Coast road swing right now, but they'll be back home for a single game homestand. Remember those? We had a lot of them last year against Utah this Friday night against the Utah Jazz. Look ahead to get tickets for that game, and then they'll be back home for a 4-game homestand the week following, starting actually the following Friday night. So lots of Wolves games upcoming. You can find games there on Game Time. The zone deals that Game Time has are a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you will save big. You can even find tickets for NBA for Wolves games for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right. We got to talk Timberwolves bigs from this Charlotte game, because exactly the thing, well, not exactly. Adjacent to the stuff I talked about on Friday's show, like the Wolves not winning the non-Rudy minutes, and then Rudy himself recently, remember, like, what was it, last Sunday, a little over a week ago, he dominated in that Timberwolves win over Indiana, of course, a team they should have beaten, even without Ant in the game in which Ant got hurt. Rudy had rough games against Denver, against the Lakers. Like, he did not play well last week at all. And then he showed up against Charlotte. And Julius Randle keeps showing up. This is his, third, I think, 30-plus point game this season. But the Timberwolves dominated the paint against a team they should have dominated the paint against. Let's see. I'm going to pull up the actual points of the paint. But I know that the Wolves had, and by the way, the rebounding numbers are not as impressive in this game because they were so bad in the first half. Let's see. Rebounding, Minnesota was actually a -7 overall. They only had 4 offensive rebounds. I think they were all in the third quarter. And how many of them were Rudy Gobert? Most, if not all of them. 3 of the 4 were Rudy Gobert, and the other was Julius Randle. Charlotte had 10 offensive rebounds. The majority of those were in the first half. Points to the paint, however, Minnesota was a +20, 56-36 points to the paint. And that's in part because of perimeter defense. Charlotte does not have perimeter defense. They are a bad defensive team. They're a bottom 5 defensive team, so that is true. But also the Timberwolves bigs played really well in this game. They were in position for lobs. They were aggressive, getting to the rim. Rudy converted 2 or 3 lobs in this game, and he also had a couple of really not like true drives, but like the dunk that he missed wasn't actually a bad take. It was just maybe a little aggressive trying to dunk it from where he tried to dunk it from. But being available for dump-off passes, and this is primarily Rudy, the points of the paint, but Randle in and around the paint, shooting his little 10, 12-footers was really good. Some of those, counted as paint points. The point is the Timberwolves bigs were significantly better than the Charlotte bigs. Julius had 37 and 4 in this game, 12 of 19 shooting. And I thought his shot selection was very good. 6 3-point attempts. He made 3 of them, but I don't think any of them were really forced. And he's been shooting so well recently. Like, I don't have a problem with Julius Randle shooting 6 threes, as long as he's also getting in the paint. And he only got to the line for 3 free throw attempts in this game, but he's averaging like nearly 7 per game this season, which is a really good number, especially with Ant out. This game just wasn't very physical. Minnesota was not physical enough in the first half. They ultimately ended up giving up 27 free throw attempts to Charlotte, which again, as I said a couple of times last week, is something to monitor how frequently the Timberwolves are fouling. Charlotte is not inherently a physical team, though. And so that led to less free throws for Minnesota. It led to, overall a higher scoring game in general. I guess Charlotte ended up only scoring 105. But, the first half, Charlotte did score a lot of points. They had, 56 at the half and only scored 18 in the third quarter. So the physicality level in this game was a bit, wonky compared to what we might see generally speaking. But, Ryan Kalkbrenner may end up being a decent rotation player, but, he wasn't going to really do much against Rudy Gobert. In fact, we did see him in garbage time. Beringer immediately came to the game and struggled to box Kalkbrenner out, which is kind of the primary concern. There's one defensive possession, and Kalkbrenner tipped an offensive rebound to a teammate, and then getting the loose ball, Beringer got kind of knocked off of it again. Part of that could be Kalkbrenner played 30 minutes and was ready to go, and Beringer had been sitting on the bench all night. But that was in a nutshell, not to get too off topic here. But the concern with Beringer right now is in those physical rebounding, especially defensive rebounding situations, can he actually box guys out? And he tried. It wasn't an effort thing. It's just he's not a very big guy. He's not a very strong guy yet. Beringer is not. But anyway, between Kalkbrenner and Diabate and some of these guys, the Timberwolves should have had an advantage in the paint and in the front court, and they did. Gobert had 14 and 15 and 5 assists for Rudy Gobert, 2 steals and 2 blocks. Anytime Gobert can have a 14-15 double-double with 5 assists and 4 stocks, that's a good Rudy Gobert game. Now for the consistency, right? He's had a couple of ho-hum games, a couple of bad games, and a couple of really good games. That's how I think I'd describe, very crudely and simply, the first 6 games for Rudy is 2 okay games, 2 terrible games, and 2 really great games. Now, where's the consistency from a veteran that needs to be more consistent, and the Wolves should be able to count on him being more consistent? Julius Randle's been awesome. He's been consistent. I think the unsung hero in this game, I know Dante scored 18 points, and I got to mention that, obviously he came back from having his nose destroyed with the elbow and shot the lights out. And actually down the stretch when Charlotte was making a mini run and got it back to single digits in midway through the fourth quarter, Dante hit a couple of big threes. He was great in this game. I would say Jaden McDaniels is the unsung hero. 14, 6, and 4. The 6 is not rebounds, it's assists. Jaden McDaniels had 6 assists. He had a lob that he threw. I think he threw the lob to – was he the one that threw the lob to Rudy? I think he was. One of the lobs to Rudy in transition. A couple of hit-ahead passes that led to assists. Just really good court vision and decision-making from Jaden. He made his only 2 3-point attempts. 2 of 2 on threes, 4 of 5 – no, wait. 2 of 2 on threes, 4 of 8 on twos. But the decision-making I thought was good. He missed a couple of cheapies at the rim, and he ultimately fouled out in 32 minutes. But it was a good Jaden game minus the fouls. And I don't know. I thought, I just want to shout him out. Nas obviously at 18. I mentioned he was great in the first half. Oh, one last thing with this game. More related to Rob Dillingham. I thought it was really telling. Rob Dillingham played a good chunk of the third quarter, and then came back in with about 6 minutes to play, and the game not over. It wasn't garbage time. It was a 10, 12-point game, something like that when he came back in. Chris Finch was clearly, the fact that he trusted him enough, and I know it's Charlotte, I know they were up, but it would have been easy to be let's hold him out until garbage time. But they did it. Finch said, Dillingham's playing well enough. I'm trusting him. I'm going to put him back on the floor for these next 4 or 5 minutes, and ultimately, I think he pulled him at the very end of the game. But I was not expecting Finch to put him back in, because the typical rhythm would just to not be, or to go with Bones Highland, because quote unquote the guy you might trust more is the veteran, which I don't necessarily agree with. I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube. But Finch did it. To his credit, he went back to Dillingham because Rob had played well and he had earned it. A quick aside on this, and I don't want to turn this into a full soapbox moment, but Rob Dillingham playing really well now doesn't necessarily mean he should have been playing at the end of last season, right? Those are two different things. And I don't think I'm building a straw man here. I think this is probably something that the Dillingham stands are pushing. And I know I've been harder on Dillingham than a lot of people, but he just hasn't looked ready to play NBA minutes until really right now. Yes, flashes in Summer League. That's Summer League. A couple of flashes last year when he saw some rotation minutes when there were injuries kind of mid-season. But this was, I thought, his best game in a Timberwolves uniform. And for Finch to bring him back in the game in the fourth quarter speaks speaks leaps and bounds, if that makes sense, speaks a lot to how significantly to how much, what Finch thought of how Dillingham played in this game. And the coach, you have to remember, the coaching staff sees him in practice. They see him in film sessions. They see him in shoot-arounds and walkthroughs in prepping for games and all that stuff. And they know what, they have belief in what he can and can't do. And perhaps he hasn't been ready. And when he gets the opportunity, he hasn't shown up. He showed up in this game, and he's going to get every opportunity against the Brooklyn Nets on Monday night to continue that momentum. And he should be able to do that, which is a perfect segue to talking about just how bad Brooklyn's been so far this year and what to look out for in this Wolves-Nets matchup. We'll do that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online with no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments or anything like that. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's Rougiette, rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code. Again, LockedOnNBA, so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, Wolves Nets tonight. It's an early game. It's, of course, in Brooklyn, so 6 p.m. Central tip, and it is on Peacock. And Brooklyn, of course, is 0-6, one of two winless teams. Brooklyn and New Orleans are the two so far in the NBA. And Brooklyn's offense has been a little bit better. Actually, their offense, according to Clean the Glass, is, 22nd in the league. But their defense has been the worst by far, like even significantly worse than New Orleans, who's also 0-6. Their defense has given up 129.6 points per 100 possessions on Cleaning the Glass, which again removes end-of-quarter heaves and garbage time. They've played a lot of garbage time. So non-garbage time, their defense has been the worst defense in the league by over 3.5 points per 100 possessions. That is significant. As a reminder, they now have Michael Porter Jr. in the fold. Cam Thomas is, of course, really good. Those are the two offensive guys, or the guys that you got to worry about on that end of the floor. There's nobody else you really got to worry about. The biggest thing to look out for against Brooklyn is offensive rebounding. They've actually been good there. They are number 6 in the league on Cleaning the Glass at offensive rebound rate. Nick Claxton is, of course, a big part of that. He always seems to play well against the Wolves. And then as far as guards go, Terrence Mann has been really good. He's another addition that they've made. He's been really good on the offensive glass, kind of crashing down off the bench. Day'Ron Sharpe, kind of the same thing. So Minnesota's guards have to be active. Their wings have to be active. I don't know necessarily who's, I would assume McDaniels guards Cam Thomas, but whoever has Terrence Mann is going to have to make sure they're paying attention to him, corner crashes and just being active on the offensive glass. That's something to keep an eye out for. So putting a body on Terrence Mann is going to be big in this game. And then also just the bigs doing exactly what I just talked about last segment. Now, Saturday had 2 days rest, so maybe that played into it a little bit. This is only 1 day rest on the road, traveling, sure. But Brooklyn did play on Sunday night. They lost on Sunday night at home. They got blown out once again, I think to Philly. Yeah, they lost to Philly by 24 at home. So Minnesota has a rest advantage, and they just need Rudy, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid to play physical on the glass. Naz was good on the glass, especially in the first half of this last game. And all three of those guys at times this year, especially Naz and Rudy, have struggled on the glass, the defensive glass especially. That's going to be a big key in this game because Brooklyn has not been a good shooting team. They shoot a lot of threes. They're 6th in three-point rate, but they're 24th in percentage. They're shooting under 33% from three as a team. Michael Porter Jr. is going to jack up a ton of threes, but he's only 33% so far this year. Cam Thomas is 37%. He's shooting 7 a game. Keep it out for Yegor Demin, who I previewed as part of the, he's a rookie, 19-year-old. I previewed this summer before the draft. I thought could potentially be a Timberwolves target. He's 42% from 3 so far this season. Plays about 19 minutes off the bench for them. So keep an eye on Demin. But overall, this is a this is a team that's going to shoot threes. They're not going to make threes. They're going to offensive rebound, though. So the more threes they get up, the more opportunities for offensive rebounds, right? It's a variance situation. It's like the more shots we get up, the more chances we have to get offensive rebounds and score, right? That's what essentially this team's philosophy is at this point. Higher volume from Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr., and really nobody else. Like Nick Claxton is averaging double-digit shots per game, which is not ideal. He's a good player. I like Nick Claxton. Like I said, he's always played well against Minnesota, but he's a little, he's their third leading scorer, and that's not really what you want if you're an NBA team. So keep an eye out for Claxton and Mann and Sharp on the offensive glass. Yegor Demon as kind of an off-the-bench three-point shooter, and then, of course, Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. So Timberwolves are going to need a big game. I would say, again, from Rudy Gobert, I would say Naz Reid is one to look out for in this game. I think he needs to have a good game. Brooklyn actually doesn't play with that big of that high of a pace for how bad they are defensively. You'd think they'd try and push the envelope, but the offense isn't good or efficient either. So Minnesota can control the pace of this game, slow it down like they like to, and they should be able to play better in a slow game than the Brooklyn Nets. So control the pace, control the defensive glass, and at least contest these threes. Don't let them launch, 60 threes and give themselves a ton of opportunities at offensive rebounds, right? Brooklyn's also not very good at getting to the free throw line, in part because they shoot so many threes, and there just aren't that many guys, this side of Cam Thomas. Like Michael Porter Jr. is not trying to get to the basket and get fouled, right? Like more than half his shot attempts, or about half of them, are three-pointers, and the rest of them are, mid-range stuff. He's averaging less than 2 free throws per game. It's basically Cam Thomas, and that's it. So if Jaden has the Cam Thomas assignment, he needs to avoid putting him on the free throw line for cheapies or for freebies, because that's or any cheapie fouls to allow for freebies at the free throw line. That just needs to be avoided, because Cam Thomas is the only guy that's really going to hurt you there. Brooklyn so far this season has not played a game that finished with a margin of less than 5 points. They've been blown out. They're 0-6. They've been blown out 4 times. They lost to the Hawks at home by 5, and they lost to the Cavs at home by 7 way back. Well, I shouldn't say way back. We're only 2 weeks of the season, but the first week of the season. So they're 0-6 with 4 blowout losses and 2 losses of 5 and 7, both at home. So they've been better at home, although they got blown up by the Sixers last night. So obviously you got to be careful here. This is the classic sort of game the Wolves have kind of kicked away in the past. So you can say that about the Charlotte matchup on Saturday, and obviously Minnesota came away from that one okay. But that's something to look out for. They got to be careful. It seems silly to talk about like looking ahead to an opponent, especially when Ant's not playing. But they do play the Knicks at MSG on Wednesday, and it's an ESPN game, and who knows if these guys are looking ahead to that at all. This could be a dangerous kind of quote-unquote trap game, but they should be able to win this game. I think they're favored by 8.5 on FanDuel. So Minnesota by 8.5. And I think they'll cover it. I do think Minnesota wins this game. I think it'll be similar to Charlotte. It may take a minute to get things rolling, but I think the Wolves will ultimately win this thing by double digits at Brooklyn on Monday. Of course, the live postcast will be on Locked On Wolves on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, this very same channel, subscribe to it. You'll be notified when Jack and Luke go live after the game. And then I'll be back early tomorrow with the post-game podcast on Tuesday. We'll do it all again Wednesday night for the Knicks game. So another big week ahead for Minnesota. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show with our guy, Josh Lloyd, the absolute best fantasy basketball podcast out there, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just like this show, the Locked On Network is also your local experts on the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.